drive him back to the store in Williams' truck so they can make some last-minute deliveries before attending a Christmas party later that night. Tommy came in through the back door. He says the lights were out, wouldn't work, and he didn't know that Eunice and her parents had also come to the store about a half hour earlier to pick out a new chair for Mr. Edwards. It was going to be his Christmas present. Tommy says when he came through the door, two men ambushed him from behind, hit him in the back of the head. They struggled. Tommy reached for a gun that he kept in a desk drawer, and he says he used it as a club. You never fired a shot?
Not to my knowledge, no.
But someone fired a shot into Tommy's stomach. That's when he hit the floor and briefly blacked out. When he came to, he crawled around in the dark looking for the phone. To his surprise, he came across a body. He said he had no clue that his wife, in-laws, or the customer, Charlie Mays, were already dead.
I crawled across somebody, but I couldn't tell who it was.
But you knew it was a body?
Yes.
What's going on, everyone? Golden Ticket to History here in downtown Winter Garden, Florida. Today we're doing a true crime video. Hopefully you guys can hear me with the traffic and everything. But true crime video going back till 1975. In this case we have right here a thrift store. It used to be a furniture store. Back in 1975, this was the location of a quadruple Christmas Eve murder in which the owner, Tommy Ziegler, and his wife Eunice Ziegler, as well as his in-laws, Perry and Virginia Edwards, were all, and as well as a customer, Charlie Mays, were killed. And Tommy Ziegler was accused of committing the murder. He was accused of bringing them all to the store, shooting them. Then he shot himself in the stomach, made the frantic call to the police station, and while he was at the hospital, he was actually arrested and charged with the murder of his wife, in-laws, and the customer Charlie Mays. On Christmas Eve, 1975. 1976, he was found guilty and sentenced to death for 2 of the murders and sentenced to life in prison without parole for the other 2.
For example, if Tommy had already killed 4 people, as the state argued, he should have been covered in blood. Why didn't Williams mention that to police?
He claims I hugged him and begged him not to leave. But yet there's no blood on his clothes.
During the investigation, detectives linked 6 guns to the killings at Ziegler's furniture store. They believe more than 24 shots were fired inside, and yet
there is no GSR, gunshot residue, on me. So explain to me how that I fired 28 gunshots and didn't get any gunshot residue on me. It's impossible.
We may never know who fired the guns because all of the weapons had been wiped clean of fingerprints. Jurors spent 20 days listening to both sides. Tommy's lawyers felt they had created reasonable doubt. On the first vote, the jurors were evenly split. 6 guilty, 6 not guilty. But over the course of 3 days, things changed. One juror, The final holdout claimed she and others were coerced.
I was pressured in it. I didn't just feel it, I was pressured into it.
Before she died, Irma Brickell said another juror used one of the guns in evidence to intimidate her by repeatedly clicking it behind her head. Others shouted at her. She sent a note to the judge, but he refused to see her. Twice, Irma Brickell passed out. But this process would not be stopped. Judge Paul allowed a doctor to provide Irma Brickell with medication.
I got sort of sick, and they called the doctor, and he just sent some tablets, and they turned out to be Valium. They fix you where you do not make a decision that you would normally make.
Not long after that, she gave in to the pressure. She went to her grave regretting it.
I feel he's innocent.
William Thomas Ziegler, a.k.a. Tommy Ziegler, walked into his family's furniture store in Winter Garden, Florida on Christmas Eve, 1975. He was going to deliver the last few Christmas presents for the holidays. Tommy attempted to turn on the lights, but they did not work. He was attacked. Suddenly, he was in the fight of his life. He was shot and passed out. When he awoke, he crawled over a body and looked for his glasses, which he was legally blind without. All he could find on the floor were Christmas bows. He found a spare pair of glasses he kept in his office and called for help. The police arrived quickly. Officer Thompson took Tommy to the hospital. He was prepared for a gunshot wound surgery. By Christmas Day at 2 p.m., Officer Thompson was having a conversation with Tommy's brother-in-law, Perry Edwards Jr. Thompson and Perry Jr. were standing together speaking with two of Mr. Ziegler's attorneys. Hadley and Van Deventer arrived at the hospital. When Officer Thompson met with law enforcement officers later Christmas Day, he told them he had information that Tommy Ziegler was secretly a gay man who was cheating on his wife Eunice. Subsequently, the prosecution-led Detective Don Fry then told the grand jury who indicted Mr. Ziegler that he was gay. Prosecution-led Detective Don Fry stated he quickly became good friends with Mr. Ziegler's brother-in-law, a sole survivor of the Edwards family. Perry Edwards Jr. using him as a secret confidential informant on the quadruple Christmas Eve murder cases. Detective Don Fry says he and Perry Edwards Jr. slept over each other's homes during the investigation of the murder case. On Christmas Eve 1975, Tommy's wife Eunice, her mother Virginia Harper Edwards, and her father Perry Burnett Edwards Sr. were all found dead on the floor of Ziegler's furniture store. The crime scene photographer swore Tommy Ziegler instantly became the prime suspect. Also found dead was a man named Charlie Mays. The prosecution claimed that he was an innocent customer. Mays had parked his blue-green van on the opposite side of a 6-foot chain-link fence next to the closed furniture store. According to his son Ernie Mays, Charlie told his family he was going to the store to get them a TV. He said they would have lots of money for Christmas. His son Ernie Mays told retired police officer Ed Rowe on several occasions he saw his father Charlie Mays put a gun in his pocket. Ernie told Officer Rowe it was Mr. Tommy who was supposed to die that night, not his daddy, Charlie Mays. The gun of Charlie Mays was never found at the store. Investigators Cardi interviewed witness Mary Wallace in 2013. Mary told her what happened to one of the guns found at the crime scene, as it was held private from the defense by the prosecution for 10 days. As they arrived, the arrival of their famous subsequent defamed blood expert, Herb McDonald. In a video clip from the Unsolved Mysteries, the prosecution's blood expert, Herb McDonald, repeated the same flawed demonstration also done in the courtroom for the Ziegler trial judge and jury in 1976. The only DNA testing Tommy Ziegler was ever granted proved he did not have his father-in-law's blood on his clothes. Tommy was arrested and convicted of the murders based on these lies about his father-in-law's blood. Tommy then had the misfortune of his case being assigned to a judge who had a grudge against him. Tommy went to a court hearing and stood up for the good character of a longtime friend and businessman in his hometown of Winter Garden, Florida. The same judge came to the same character meeting and was siding against Mr. Ziegler's friend. In May of 2021, an Orange County prosecutor has appended decades of rejections by the Florida judicial system, agreeing to support death row inmate Tommy Ziegler's request for DNA testing. Ninth Judicial State Attorney Monique H. Worrell will back the effort, which has been denied at least 6 times over 2 decades. An agreement signed by one of her assistant state attorneys on May 18th releases all of the evidence in Ziegler's case to his attorneys for testing at a lab certified by the American Society of Crime Laboratory Directors. Ziegler was elated at this news. "I'm hoping and praying," he wrote in an email today, "that the test results come back with enough evidence to force the court to grant me a new trial." Ziegler believes the tests will prove he did not murder his wife-in-laws and another man at his family's Winter Garden furniture store on Christmas Eve in 1975. His appeals lawyers argue his victim's blood should still be detectable on his clothes if he committed the murders. His father-in-law's fingernail clippings also could hold answers. He fought with someone throughout the dark store before being shot and bludgeoned with a metal crank. Ziegler's lawyers are willing to pay for the testing and hope to expedite it. Ziegler is now 75 and his health is fragile. He has struggled with breathing and heart problems since contracting the coronavirus last summer. Even with rules support, the request for DNA testing must still be approved by a judge, but legal motions for testing with support of the prosecutor typically are not rejected. "I feel like getting a drink and going out and dancing in the street," said Ziegler's defense attorney. We're now going down the streets where the Zieglers lived. Just right behind me is the Temper Grove Drive, where Tommy and Eunice Ziegler had a really modest ranch-style home right next to his parents. Quaint little neighborhood. Never would have expected something like this to have occurred. I'm going to show some. The exact address is not known, but I'm going to show you some clips from driving up and down the street, and maybe you can give us some comments on what houses you think potentially could be that of a well-off furniture owner in a small town of Winter Garden, Florida. Let me know what you think.